So this second half of 1-1, we're going to be talking about formulas. And so it's very similar to what we just did, except a formula is something that's kind of predefined. The definition is that it's a mathematical sentence that expresses relationship between quantities. So you learned a lot about these in geometry, so this first one probably looks familiar. So the area of a trapezoid is given right here. 1/2 times the height, and then times the sum of the bases. H is the height, 2 bases here. So what we're doing is we've got this last sentence here that gives us some of the information that we want to use. All we're going to do is we're going to answer this, find the area, just by plugging in these values into this given formula. So very similar to what the first half of this section was. Just like I said, these are now commonly known formulas that you'd use in areas like geometry. So find the area. So A equals, so we start with this formula right here. So 1/2 and then times H. Well, H is given as, let's see, here it is, height of 8 meters. Okay, so height of 8 meters, we're going to sub in 8 for height, and then times the sum of the bases. So in parentheses, we have a base of 13 meters, and then a base of 25 meters. So 13 for the first base, doesn't matter which one, I'm just writing it first because it was listed first, and then 25. Okay, so now once that's written out, then we jump back to what the order of operations would tell us to do first. So it first tells us to deal with grouping symbols. So we've got this right here. This is also technically a grouping symbol just because of the way I wrote it, but there's nothing to do inside that set of parentheses. It's just an 8. So we start here inside this set of parentheses, which tells us to add those two together. So leave everything else exactly the way it's written. So 13 plus 25 gives us 38. And then the next step is exponents. We don't have any. Next step is to multiply or divide. So that's what we're going to be doing next. Now, multiplication, we have something called the commutative property. Something called the associative property, which we're going to be learning about in a couple sections. And what that tells us is that we can multiply in any order that we want. So whatever you find easiest. If you want to multiply 1/2 times 8 first, or if you want to multiply 1/2 by 38 first, or 8 times 38, whatever you want. I'd say multiplying 1/2 times 8 is pretty easy, so I'm going to start there. So 1/2 times 8 is basically taking half of 8, and so that would be 4, and then you multiply that by 38. So like I said, I want you to have strong skills, multiplication skills, addition skills. Calculators are great. You should be able to do something like this by hand very quickly. So 8 times 4 is 32, carry the 3, 3 times 4 is 12, and then add the 3 back on. Okay, so we've got 152, and then when you're dealing with formulas, geometry, any sort of story problems, it's really important that you have whatever units they gave you. So meters for both of these. Remember, area is always going to be squares, square feet, square meters, square centimeters. So you write 152 meters squared, and that would be your final answer. Okay, example 4 is our only other problem we're going to look at. And this is a special formula for the area of a triangle, one you guys probably haven't heard of before. This was created by a mathematician named Heron. And so this is our formula. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different variables. S is given by this right here, and then A, B, and C are the lengths of the 3 sides. Okay, so we're going to start by coming up with S. So we've got 3 sides. Now it doesn't matter which one's A, B, and C. Doesn't matter at all. So we'll start by finding S, and then we'll sub all that into this formula. So S is A plus B plus C. So that means we add the 3 side lengths together. So 6 plus 11 plus 14. And then the formula says to divide it all by 2. So remember, like I said in the last note section, grouping technically means like the numerator is grouped together and the denominator is grouped together. So we're going to add all of these. So 6 plus 11 gives us 17. And then plus 14 gives us 31. So the numerator is 31, and then divide that by 2. Okay, so 31 divided by 2, you can leave it as an improper fraction like that. You can write it as a decimal if you want to. That would be 15.5. Your call. Okay, so this we are definitely going to want to use a calculator for. So we've got that 15.5, which is obviously a decimal, or you could have left it in fraction form. And then to top things off, our formula involves a square root. So there's kind of a lot going on in that formula, and we are definitely going to want to have a calculator to do that, okay? So let's plug everything in. So A equals, we've got a big square root symbol with all this stuff underneath, so start with S, so 15.5, and then in parentheses we have S minus A, so 15.5 minus the first side length, which is 6. Again, doesn't matter which order you put them in. Then S minus B, so 15.5 minus the next side length, which is 11. And then 15.5 minus the last side length, which is 14. So like I said, we're going to want a calculator. So your calculator screen looks something like this when you first turn it on. So you want to do a new document. We want to avoid using Scratchpad, but I'll talk about that in class. So new document. If you have anything saved, no, there's no need to save it. We're going to go to just a calculator page. That's what you'll typically be using. So type in exactly what you have on this screen right here. Okay, so the square root button, if you find the 4, the number 4 is right here. Just to the left of it, there's an x squared, and above that is the square root. So hit the control and then the square root. And then you're basically just going to type this out exactly as it's written. So 15.5. And then just like these are in parentheses, you're going to use parentheses, which are right next to the 0. There's an open and close right here. So open parentheses, 15.5 minus 6, close them. Open 15.5 minus 11. And last set of parentheses, 15.5 minus 14. Okay, so when you hit enter, it'll give you a decimal approximation, which is about 31 point, let's do 2 decimal places. I would get in that habit. So 31.53. The 6 would round the 2 up to a 3. And what we're going to do when we write this answer is we're going to put a little squiggly equal sign, which means it's not an exact answer. We rounded it, so that's an approximation. So you say the area is approximately equal to, not exactly equal to. So 31.53, and then since these are inches, the area will be in inches squared.